Om Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogindra Pujam Jugadharma Patrim Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vijnana Datrim Dayaswarupam Pranamami Nityam Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. O Sharada, propitious goddess, killer of misery in souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, by saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind, give us love and wisdom, thou, O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagatcha Akanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shutaya Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman, divine reality, is pure and perfect. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karabhavahoi, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Namaste and Swagatam, welcome into our midst here on a Sunday afternoon where it is our penchant to gather to dive into what is generally known, maybe not so popularly known, as Dharma or Dharma teachings, which are a whole cut of transmissions, we might say, from a deeper side of the mind and soul that transcend morality and ethics after we are well versed in them, of course, and deliver to us the essence of teachings that are not just ancient but timeless. This is called in India Sanatana Dharma, because that word Sanatana means eternal, and they know in India that everything just moves in cycles, that, as Krishna states in the Gita to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that there are no such things as middle, beginnings, and ends. Those are all appearances, changing phenomena, if you want to put it in more Buddhistic terms. And there's an observer to the changing phenomena. That's you. That's your true nature. Your unreal nature, or your small self, is the one that's reacting to all this phenomena out there, which we see a lot of nowadays, in the form of negativity going on. As Swami Vivekananda, our great ideal, has said, no such thing as a good world. That's like saying hot ice. It's always a mixture of good, bad, and maybe even worse, mix itself, admixture itself. That's the confusing part of karma. And karma being good, bad, and mixed, according to the teachings. 3 types of karma, maybe 4 if you extend the teaching. 3 dynamics, 3 stages, various teachings that have to do with this word, which is rather a loaded word. Karma, as we said last week in our first class on titled Karma as Yoga, which is this week we're giving our second class, is just a word that means action or activity. But the loaded part of it is that it bears cause and effect in it. And also India has known from time out of mind that in these cycles of beginnings, middles, and ends that are apparently going on, that is under the supervision of a transcendent witness. There's also cause and effect to pay for. And as Sri Sharada Devi has said, whose pictures grace both the charts I have for you to begin today, Sri Ramakrishna's great divine consort, Holy Mother they've called her, with a following of some 5 to 6 million people now, in this region or realm or loka of eternal dharma, or eternal truth. She has told us that you have to pay for the use of this body in this world to the last farthing. So that's karma, but she's also graced us with the teaching that where a sword was destined to fall, a pin must at least prick. So there is a payment coming back from all activities we do in the form of good, bad, and mixed. And it's coming from Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami, 3 Sanskrit words. Karma from past lifetimes, karma that you're accruing in this lifetime as you do actions, and then karma that will bear fruit in future lifetimes. So if you're not down with yet or acceptant of the fact that you've lived many times before in the body, and also probably have connected that with the fact that your mind is producing these bodies out of ideation by the billions over long periods of time, which are weighted down by this idea of beginnings, middles, and ends. That's basically birth, life, and death you're talking about. Then you probably aren't, to use a Hawaiian word, akamai, or in the know about the fact that even Jesus knew that eternal life was far beyond this idea of being born, living, and dying. And that there was, just like an eternal dharma, eternal teachings that wise souls bring with them when they come to earth in the body. They recover it right away in an early age. But there's also these 3 phases of time over which many lifetimes are possible. Not if you look back linear time, because you've only been on this planet. Mankind has only walked upright on this planet for a few million years, so that would be a lot of lifetimes, but we're talking about not going back in time, or of course not going up in space, because nothing much up there either of interest, but going back inside of yourself, into the kingdoms of heaven inside of you, or what we've been calling lately the mind. The mind is the kingdom of heaven. So when you're dreaming at night, you're actually in heaven. And your dreams, the dreams of most people are are actually rather foggy and indeterminate, indefinite, although there are such things as visionary dreams had by people who are practicing meditation and who are yearning for God with all their heart, all their mind, and all their soul, with every breath they take, like our Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, our ideal, and his divine consort. They come and exemplify that, so they bring this wisdom with them from lifetime to lifetime when they do take a body, and grace us with it. And then we too become fit for the state of Brahman. That's a quote out of the Gita by Sri Krishna. Those who have become fit for the state of Brahman. That's a non-dual state, by the way, and non-duality is something very rare and rather unknown to us in the West too, probably to the world, even to India nowadays, I think. It's this state of non-duality. And non-duality is a state, among other things, which is actionless, like your deep sleep tonight, or your meditation, if your mind allows you it to be quiet and still and not think. Like the teachers tell you, try not to think. You spent your life trying to think. Your parents were on your case because you weren't thinking. And so you started thinking, and then you met a Zen teacher and you said, stop thinking. So you can't really win for losing, you see. But the point here being that there is an art of inaction that brings peace to the mind. Holy Mother said that at one point. She said, you need peace of mind first and foremost. And again, Krishna in the Gita has followed that up by saying that don't do any actions in restlessness, and don't do any actions in slothfulness, because those bring karma, cause effect from your deeds, mixed and bad usually. Sometimes they bring good effects that are bad. That's one of the problems of this admixture of karma, is that you can do a good act of stupefaction. That's a teaching I like from Lord Kapila, who is a very ancient rishi of India. Good acts of stupefaction and bad acts of stupefaction. So what is sweet today will turn sour tomorrow. And what is sour today could very well turn sweet tomorrow. So you have this shifting sands. You don't build your house on that. And then you have this bedrock. That's another way of saying. So if you were to avail yourself of a Dharma teaching then, wherein you knew that the soul was essentially inactive, it was the foundation for everything, it was the bedrock, and that nothing could sway it, nothing could destroy it, and nothing could change it at all, then you're on the track of this path of non-duality. They call that Advaita Vedanta. It's also very much a part of Satori and Zen Buddhism. And that strange word sometimes we hear about if you frequent Buddhist environs, emptiness, shunyata, emptiness. So I'm starting off this way because sometime in today's class I want to contrast the title of this class, Karma as Yoga, with next to the yoga of inaction, because there's a yoga in which we're doing action, and the main part of this three class series is that what if we were to do all action consciously? What a novel idea. But most people are doing actions in restlessness, with a restless mind, that is. And then they're also going out in a slothful state of mind and doing actions. And you think maybe they really can't discriminate between good and bad, or good, bad, and mixed. Karma, akarma, and vikarma, it's called in the Bhagavad Gita. Action you should not engage in, action that's ordained that you must engage in, and no action at all. It's a threefold teaching that's very valuable, because then if it's brought back to you in this day and age, then you can negate or withdraw from karma that's not enjoined, that's actually forbidden, because it brings suffering to yourself and to others, even worse, to others probably. If it brings suffering to yourself, that's probably, in India, kind of a good thing, because it wakes you up. Suffering wakes you up, pleasure puts you to sleep. It's kind of the general idea in the East. So, of course, you don't want to suffer unconsciously, but if it's a kind of conscious suffering that draws you to the Lord, to the Mother, or to, if you're not so enamored of God with form, which is a fact of existence, then to the formless. A lot of people tend to lean toward the formless. So, later on we can contrast that. In the meantime, I can remind you that last week we looked at these 5 types of agency. We looked at teachings that had to do with the body-mind mechanism, or the antakarana, the fourfold mind. Be able to look back on that and see those posted. Or you can look back on the live streaming already and see the original classes if you want to catch up. But we do a series of classes like this all year, so there's a lot to catch up on. If you miss a live streaming class on Sunday, you can follow the trail of the teachings better if you keep current with them. And what we're following up on this week is last week's class, based on the idea that karma as yoga. I could have given a class that was just about karma yoga. So there are basically 4 yogas, 4 main yogas that people engage in. That's the yoga of wisdom, the yoga of devotion, the yoga of meditation, and the yoga of action. So that suits the 4 kinds of temperaments that people have. Some people are studious, so they take immediately to the yoga of wisdom. And that's a yoga where you discriminate and practice negation. It's pretty well suited for monastic temperaments, although some householders who are more austere take to it. So that's one temperament, you see. Another temperament, which is a yoga that's more heavily populated, although less and less nowadays, I think, is the yoga of bhakti, or devotion. People of a devotional temperament, they just have a natural feeling for God in their hearts, and their minds yearn for contact with that more intensely in the case of people who are closer to the source. So that's the second yoga that suits that kind of temperament. There's a third and fourth kind of temperament that is contemplative and then very active. So the contemplative person is going to be practicing what we call Raja Yoga, or sometimes they call it Dhyan Yoga, the yoga of meditation, in which they're trying to attain Samadhi. Samadhi is a Sanskrit word that we really have no equivalent for in English. Nirvana, again, is a Sanskrit word used in the Bhagavad Gita. Satori in Zen, as I just mentioned. Asampragyata in yoga means seedless state, where the mind doesn't give rise to bodies anymore. It doesn't produce bodies, either in physical realm or in heaven, like in the realms of ideation. It doesn't dream bodies anymore. It's like a hailstone that's fallen in an ocean. It's just one with everything. So that yoga of contemplation then has a very high ideal. And then there's this final yoga which we're talking about last week and today and next week at the same time. Karma yoga, it's the yoga of action. And my idea was that since everyone's doing it all the time, that we try and make it a yoga. On the drive over here today, we were talking in the car about how people are doing action all the time, and whether or not they want to think of it as a yoga, because after all, yoga is also an Indian Sanskrit word, and it could put people off. But basically, I think it's a word that's sort of come over the border, if you will, and has impressed us. Unfortunately, sometimes only with the physical side, because people are doing asana and using it in the physical realm only. But as we were talking about just before class, it's a mental yoga first and foremost. And because, again, if you understand that all bodies come from the mind, nature can't produce them alone, your parents can't produce them alone, and God does not have anything to do with producing your body, in my tradition, then you know that your own mind is making up these bodies. There are kinds of dream bodies that you're taking, and you're doing it over and over again over cycles of time. If you do it unconsciously, that's called samsara. Have you heard of that word? Or Maya. The queen of all four-letter words, we call that in Maya. So, but if you do it consciously, like the seers and the yogis and the saints and the sages and the rishis and the luminaries do, then it's not birth and death at all. It's just a putting on of new clothes, and after you discard the old clothes. That's again how Krishna describes it in the Bhagavad Gita. That these souls just outgrow their old body, and just like children putting on new clothes, they'll discard that body without the least attachment to it and just take on a new body and a new set of parents. And this is all done consciously by the mind, the illumined mind that's in yoga. So the word yoga then is a very powerful word to use, since we don't again have any equivalent in English for it, except maybe words like union or to yoke. They sometimes say to yoke yourself to God, like an oxen to a supply wagon. Then you might as well be okay with this word yoga. And if you are, then if you understand that there's such a path as karma yoga, and that everyone's doing action all the time, then hopefully we can turn this action conscious. Because, as I said, there are acts of good stupefaction out there being done. We want an example. Somebody dams up a river behind their house so the kids can swim. Downstream, people are dying of thirst. See? So these things are happening all the time, and they confuse people. The media, the politics of the day, what to speak of today, any time really, are based upon this unknowing, this cloud of nescience that is in people's minds, this lack of discrimination. And the Dharma that we're teaching is specifically suited to do away with that cloud. It's the sunshine that's penetrating through and taking you to the farthest shore beyond all darkness. It's a quote out of our scriptures. So, if people not very many people practice the art of meditation, and if people are losing their devotion to God with form, even churches failing and so forth to communicate, and if people also are very, very rarely looking into the scriptures and studying them with a guru or with an illumined soul, then there's this one yoga left that's an avenue to everyone. It's action. So the whole point, instead of calling the class karma yoga, or just karma, good and bad, cause and effect, we're calling it karma as yoga. We're going to try and take all our actions, we're going to render them conscious. And so to do that, you might borrow a phrase from some of the popular Buddhists of today, like mindfulness. You hear that out there, a word that's being used. Let's do everything mindfully. So you go to a retreat of some kind, you see, like sit in zazen or something like we used to do on Oahu back in the 70s. And everything you do will be just very careful. You see. You'll sit mostly, sometimes 6 or 8 hours without moving. But when you do move, it's up to eat or to use the bathroom or something, you see. So even all that has to be completely mindful. Your bowl and what you eat and how you eat and what your mind is thinking as you eat. It's all set up for you to practice mindfulness. And then you go home and you just go back to your own life, you see. So how to do all work as yoga even outside the zendo, or outside the monastery, or outside the retreat, is rather the point. And so if we avail of ourselves of the path of karma yoga, because it's well defined, particularly by beings like Ramchandra, the avatar of the Treta Yuga, and Sri Krishna in the Gita, these are beings that have laid down the law, literally, about the bullet points of karma yoga. And we looked at those last week in the chart, Chaturdasha Yoga, and the four great yogas. As Vivekananda has said that he wants us to try and blend all of these, but possibly before blending them, you're going to have to know that each one of them has a sort of counterpart to it. So action would have a counterpoint called inaction. If you didn't know about inaction, then your actions wouldn't be very well informed. If you knew about inaction, then you had a refuge from your daily actions. Because your daily actions, let's admit it, probably aren't very conscious, aren't very fruitful, aren't very beneficial, aren't very positive. They're a real mixed bag at work, with the family, and so forth. And so you need a refuge from that. That would be the art of inaction, or Raja Yoga. You'd know that I have a place to go, like through this door here on my right. There's a beautiful shrine room in which we did worship last night, and the place is covered with flowers. We offered so many flowers from Hawaii's gardens that it's fragrant in there, it's peaceful, it's got good vibrations. Every time we go in there, we bow. We've transformed it into a place of worship. That's Bhakti Yoga, you see. So it's one of those four sides of yoga that we're practicing to make ourselves more conscious. And it has a lot to do with action. You have to go in there and you have to take holy water and purify yourself, and you have to say your mantra, your prayers, and you have to offer incense to the deities. And you have to think that these pictures of deities actually house the real deity. They're the symbol lying behind which is the actual essence of the god, goddess, avatar, or great soul that you worship, that you've selected as your ideal. Everyone must have an ideal here in this world. Higher ideals are better because they deliver you out of bad and mixed karma. So this refuge at a very high place, you might say the doorway opening into bhakti would be a doorway opening again further into non-duality, to where I and my Father are one, and there's no difference anymore between God and nature, creature and creator, God or mankind. There's no difference anymore. That's that at-one-ment that you feel, called Samadhi or Satori. And it needs to be prepared for. So you need to prepare the way for it. So Jesus prepared the way for you, they say in Christianity. See, I'm going to heaven to prepare the way for you. So then you have to prepare the way to get on the path that leads to Him, the one that He prepared for you. And so your life is all, as a sadhaka, we call it, sadhaka means a practitioner of religion and spirituality. Then you're going to be preparing the way, and since everywhere you see around you, your family, upbringing, society, professional occupation, politics, military, you've got this whole mass, seething mass of madding crowd around you, see. And where are you going to go for refuge, for peace of mind, for silence, for quiet, for introspection, for contemplation? But inside of yourself. And if your mind is restless, then there's no refuge there for you. This world is not for those who do not worship. Then how can any other world be for them? So there's no place for you to go. You have no recourse. And then that leads to sevenfold road to ruination. I brought that chart today for you to look at. The sevenfold road to ruination that Krishna talks about. Really, but pretty much starts with brooding on unreal things. So maybe with that little preamble, which is my usual kind of preamble, we can begin looking into some of the actual Dharmic teachings that proceed from India. And remember, when we say India, we're talking about yoga, we're talking about Vedanta, we're talking about Tantra, we're talking about Samkhya Yoga, we're talking about Jainism, we're talking about Buddhism, because he was a Hindu man. We're talking about Shaktism, we're talking about Shaivism, the worships of Mother and Shiva, talking about Vaishnavism, the worshippers of Vishnu. We're talking about the worshippers of the elephant-headed god, Ganapatya or Ganesha, and much, much more. India's had many, many Jesuses throughout time, and it's had many, many teachings, and has many, many scriptures, and many, many sects and cults, and also 6 very major darshanas, clear paths to seeing God. Darshana, that's what that word means. Well, we're going to go have darshan with such and such a person, you see. She's going to hug me, so I'll go see her, you see. Something like that. That's not the word. Darshana really means a clear path to seeing God. So if you set foot on a path in India, then you're following a path of yoga, you're following a path of Vedanta, you're following a path of Samkhya Yoga, or those are basically the 3 main paths that have come across the shores to America and to West, mainly because Swami Vivekananda brought them here in 1893 at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago. He was the first one on the scene before all the other Indian teachers got the idea. And he came straight from the heart of Sri Ramakrishna, and at the behest of Divine Mother of the Universe, the wonderful Shakti he worshipped, Holy Mother, gave out these teachings of Vedanta. He said the Westerners are pink. What did he mean by that? They're neither red nor white. So they're not completely restless to no end, nor are they pure. They're somewhere in between. See? So rajas is the word in Sanskrit. So you're very restless, and so your restlessness is giving way to evil actions. Rajas pretty much points to evil actions. That's unconscious. Tamas is is worse, if you can imagine, worse than evil. It's mindless. But neither are they white yet, so they're not pure, they're not sattvic yet. They're not doing everything consciously, and they're not working for the highest good of other beings. They're still selfish. So, since they're somewhere in between red and white, then we should bring them this teaching called Vedanta. Veda anta means the end of the Vedas. Means there are actually 4 portions of the Vedas. In one interpretation, you say 3 of them have to do with action, karma kanda, and the other one has to do with wisdom. So this is what gives you, or gave great beings like Vivekananda the idea that all action should lead towards knowledge. If it doesn't, then action becomes the only route that people take. Restless action, acts of stupefaction, and so forth. But that's not the end of it. If actions should lead you to knowledge, and they have no other purpose, like a whole lifetime of action gets you nowhere except death, which is a thought that probably has occurred to more sensitive people when they look at life, when they have some age under their belt. They're thinking, well, what's going to be the purpose of all this action when it's all going sweet and sour, good and bad, virtue and vice, positive and negative, constantly flip-flopping? Then there must be something of an ultimate nature that I should be able to cling to. Because Jesus told us birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you don't have any place to lay your head here on earth. Mankind is not meant for earth. This is a sojourn. This is a dream. So to wake up from that dream then is to posit yourself with certitude and direction towards an ideal that puts to death all this doubt and fear that's going around in the collective mind today, and settles you in one position like I'm sitting. I'll sit in this position for the next 3 hours. I won't even feel it. and out of my mouth will come words coming from her, whom I've dedicated myself to for 50 years in this lifetime alone. And I'll try and transmit to you the teachings of the Dharma, which are of infinite nature. There are so many subjects, all divine subjects, that the seers can talk to you about, that your guru, if you found him or her, told you about, hopefully as young as you could possibly be when you went to that teacher. I was 20, in my early 20s when I found my teacher, so I was very fortunate, because I know people who are still looking in their old age to find some ideal that they can depend upon. So, if not, then you've got this action in cycles. So it has to lead to some sort of knowledge. If it just leads to secular knowledge, India goes on to say, like mathematics, arts, crafts, science, even religion, I think, is a kind of lower knowledge now. If it just leads there, then Krishna calls it dangerous in the Gita. Because just like action has to lead to knowledge, knowledge then has to lead to truth. So if your knowledge doesn't lead to truth, you've got the knowledge which we see out here. Isn't it dangerous? How about Nagasaki? How about Hiroshima? Is our knowledge of science leading us to dangerous things, to violent things, to breaking the laws of the Dharma? When India, for 2,500 years before Buddha appeared, who himself appeared 550 years before Jesus, has been practicing nonviolence for all that time. Wouldn't hurt a fly, wouldn't hurt a flea. They're very versed in the yoga of inaction then, because they know if they just sit in one place and they stop breathing and they stop thinking, they're not going to hurt anything. Much less likely to hurt anything in a position like that. So they say to the Jain, well, you need a job here. Let's go out. We're going to dig a well. Oh no, I can't do that. You see, I'll kill creatures if I dig a well. Well, we're going to drain a lake over there. Help us do that. Oh, I can't do that. There are fish in there that will die. Well, we're going to start a perfumery business. No, I can't do that. I can't kill animals. You see, we're going to burn down a forest. No, I can't do that. Why won't they do that when everything obviously dies anyway? Because they don't want any karma on their hands when they leave the body. The less karma they have when they leave the body, the more peaceful their mind is, the more likely it's going to get them into heaven. However, in Hinduism, or in India and Vedanta, we use heaven lip service, you see. We just render it lip service. Because higher than heaven is this non-dual state of reality, which is enlightenment, which is pure conscious awareness, which is timeless, deathless consciousness. It's a state unthinkable. It's the peace that passeth all understanding. And so one is going to need to render action, if they do it, as neutral as they possibly can. So I could have brought the chart on Jainism and gone through all those teachings I was just beginning to mention to you, to tell you how they are very, very careful about their karma. So karma isn't just a word that you banter about at some New Age party then, or some word that doesn't have any profound meaning, that just happened to come over from India and you're just throwing it around sort of superficially. It's a very deep teaching that goes very powerful in very powerful directions. I mean, for instance, then if we were to bridge the idea of karma, then we would look at our standard teachings on it. So there's the 4 types of karma, and there is the dynamics of karma. Now, we took a peek at that last week. This is the basic teaching, and like I said, the real teachers of karma that are most notable, and we go through these 2 charts probably twice a year in SRV, and we keep repeating them because repetition is the spice and life of spiritual practice. We have to have these teachings drilled into our mind again and again and again until one day all of a sudden we have an insight. And then that insight, maybe you have another one to add to it, and eventually from this combination of insights you have a major awakening. And if you have enough major awakenings, you get revelation, and enough revelations, you get realization. So it's just a culminative thing. You're dealing with the mind in Maya, the mind behind this curtain of Neshin. This mind that's been taught that it has a birth, it has a life, and it has a death, you see. But it's never been taught that it's birthless and deathless. Namrichorna Shanka, Name Jati Beda, Pita Naiva Me Naiva, Mata Majanmaha. As Shankara says, I have no death. Why is that? Because I was never born. I have no father. I have no mother. I am Chidananda Rupaha. I am the very form of pure consciousness. Shivaham, Shivaham. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. See, so that was a monk who knew the essence of the scriptures when he was 8 years old, and taught graybeards when he was 12. He lived about 700 AD. So he's one of these great Christ-like figures of India that recalled everything from his past lifetimes at the age of 8. It came to him in a huge series of insights. So he just remembered his past lifetimes. That's all it is, really. So you can see what a rock and a hard place the Westerner is up against if they're not even yet entertaining the idea that you've lived many times. If you haven't even gotten that far yet in your philosophy or in your cosmology or in your spirituality, because those three things lead to each other. You have a cosmology. Based on that, a philosophy forms, and based upon that, you have the possibility for actual spirituality to take over your life. The spirit, you see. You're not matter, you're the spirit. And that spirit is that witness consciousness we're talking about. So what's standing in the way of that then is these, or what could benefit you, depending on how you look at it, is these three karmas here. Ram has, taken the arrow out of his scabbard, and he's put it in the bow, and he's about to shoot it. So basically that one action, because we're talking about karma, right? That's an action. So he's got arrows held in the scabbard. Just so for us, that's karma that's past, that we're experiencing right now. It just isn't random or come from nowhere. And God doesn't make it happen either. And there's no devil behind it. Those are three slaps in the face to the thinking of Westerners nowadays, especially narrow thinkers. See? God doesn't do anything. God is actionless. God is not here in the world. The world is in God. So you're going to have to turn things all around and raise yourself to that. You can't pull that down here. You can't pull God down to earth. It won't come. God is a formless reality. It's your true self, but it's pure consciousness and it's formless. Do you see formlessness here? Closest thing you get to formlessness is by looking up in the sky. And sky has planets in it. So, can't go very formless with that element. Where's the next place they'll look? Ether. Ether holds all things. So it's the best example for formless reality on the physical level. But your thoughts are a better example. They can go empty. You can vacate them, or they can vacate you in deep sleep tonight. So then you begin to study your deep sleep state. Oh, I was waking, then I was dreaming. But, then I went into deep sleep and I don't remember it. But when I went into deep sleep is when I got the best rest. And when I came out, I was, I was ready to go for another day or night of my life, you see. So what is it about deep sleep that made everything so balanced, you see, or took away my imbalance? So they studied deep sleep. The teaching in India for a long time is if you if in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, as Jesus was to say later, then that word is Om, A-U-M, and A is your waking state, U is your dreaming state, and M is your deep sleep state. That's the basic philosophy given out by India around the Word. And so in the beginning, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So there was a beginning, that's A, and then there was a time when the Word was with God, that's U, and then there was a time when the Word was God, that's M, when everything dissolved. So here's this idea of continual cycles, beginnings, middles, and ends, beginnings, middles, and ends. You do that every 10, 15 seconds. You breathe in, you hold your breath, and you breathe out. But are you conscious of it? So that's called ajapa. If you were to become conscious of God in every breath and never forget, then you would be in that state of non-determinacy or inaction, formlessness, pure consciousness. You'd be fit for the state of Brahman. So how to keep yourself conscious every second like that? So if it's not happening to you day to day in your world of action, then you do it in you go to the philosophy and you say, I have to understand this deeper. And the philosophy then tells me, oh, I see. My in-breath, my held breath, and my out-breath is just like birth, life, and death. It's a threefold movement. And it's also like my waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state over many years, over many lifetimes. It's all threefold like that. And beyond the threefold is the fourth Duryea. It's a transcendence, they call it. That's where there is no birth, life, death. That's where you're not breathing. What is it? 240,000 breaths you take a day, and at night in deep sleep you take maybe half of that. So you're definitely stepping down. You're gearing down for something that must be very precious to the soul, called formlessness or peace, natural meditation, sahaja, a natural state of nothingness. That's empty, yes, but it's empty of all things that plague you. When you wake back up, it's not empty of essence. That's one thing we want to be careful with the Buddhist teachings, that we don't mistake the word emptiness or shunyata to mean voidness. Because you can't believe in the void because it has a word, you see. If it has a word, it exists. So, and if somebody coined a word for the void, then somebody must have seen the void in order to coin a word for the void. So everything has a word, and that word is based on a thought, and that thought comes out of non-dual essence. So you're the witness of the void. So when you die, you witness emptiness. When you go into deep sleep tonight, you witness emptiness, and you're still there. Now, that's a quick way of putting it. If you're following the yoga of Jnana, that yoga I was talking about at the beginning of class, where you're studying the scriptures and trying to discriminate, you're weeding the garden. You're starting with the body and you're saying, I'm not that. You've probably heard this before, right? I'm not the body, I'm not the body. And then from there you say, I'm not the senses. And then from there you say, then I'm not the prana that operates the senses, the life force. Let's call it life force. And you say, well, then I'm not the mind either. You see, there are some little elements in between life force and mind that we don't know about, like subtle elements and tanmatras they're called. But basically you jump to, I'm not the mind, and then I'm not the intellect, and then, oh, guess what, I'm not the ego. So this is called neti-neti. This is called dissolving the mind stream. So you start from the outside, you weed your garden, and you end up at nothingness. But you're still present. So the big lesson you're teaching yourself is that I am. I mean, that's the philosophical way to explain the lip service people are giving to that expression today. I am, or I am that. They'll see it on the cover of a book and think, yes, that's good, that's my philosophy. But they'll never actually do the process themselves of getting rid of the body, getting rid of the senses, getting rid of the life force, getting rid of the mind, getting rid of the intellect, and getting rid of the ego in practice, in their own mind, every day until it's gone, until they can say, I'm not any of it. I was sitting in bed the other night, laying in bed. I do that a lot because I can't sleep. So I get a little deep sleep, thankfully. But I was laying there and I think a lot about the Dharma. See, how do I present this to people so that it will impress them and it will get through that cloud of nations and cause them to do conscious actions or no action at all. And I was thinking, well, there's that beautiful teaching of Shankara about nirvana, called the Nirvana Shatkam. And I sing a few verses of it sometimes to you, and I wonder if I remember all 6 of them. So I started reciting in my head, you see. Do I remember them? And they came forth from Mano Burjahamkara Chitani Naham Nacha Shrotra Jiyuve Nacha Grana Netre Nacha Vyoma Bhumir Nateja Navayu Chirananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. That first verse came to me. Mano buddha hamkara. Mind, intellect, and ego. Nacha, I'm not. Mano buddha hamkara. Chittani naham. I'm not thoughts either. Chit. Nacha shrotra jive, nacha grana netre. Nacha vyoma bhumir. I'm not any of the 5 elements. Light, water, sound, touch, smell, senses. I'm not any of those either. That's not me. Those are overlays. Those are add-ons. Something that I created when I created my body from my thought. Without any help from God and without any hindrance from the devil. I did it all myself. It's my responsibility. I'll deal with the devils in there later and hopefully find God somewhere in the midst of it. But this is all my doing, you see. So when I said, that's a beautiful teaching, I have it in my mind, I can sit silent in the woods forever just thinking about that, you see. It's my own knowledge now. Just like food has become my organs and my blood and the nutrients flowing through me. Just like that, the thought of this in my mind as memory can become my mind now. Can make my mind peaceful whenever I want. I have control of my mind then. And then I don't go around doing actions that are restless. Why should I when I'm not the mind? See? I don't go around thinking badly. Why should I when I'm not the intellect? And I don't go around arrogant and causing trouble. Why should I when I'm not the ego? And I don't go around having bad thoughts. Why should I when I'm not the thoughts? Chittani naham. So I said, well, what's the next verse then? Nacha prana sango nameva teja vayu pitanaiva menaiva mata majanmaha. Nacha prana sango. So I'm not the prana, I'm not this life force that's flowing through everything. What makes me act, what makes me see, what makes me hear, all those things I'm not either. Those are just the energy behind these things. What makes my eyes see, what makes my ears hear. People don't usually think about that. Maybe they will just jump from senses to brain. So it must be something to do with the brain. But they're leaving out this very essential thing called the 5 pranas. The prana that makes you inhale, the prana that makes you exhale, the prana that moves your blood, the prana that causes you to excrete your waste, There's a whole function, five-fold function in you that's going on. So anyway, this idea of the Nirvana Shatkam, the 6 verses on I am not, what I am not, came to me. So this, although a little long-winded, but very connected to the whole yoga of action and inaction, is why the yoga of wisdom dovetails so nicely with the yoga of action. If you have knowledge, then your actions are going to be well informed, and you'll have less karma to pay for. Pretty soon you can neutralize all karma, like I saw my teacher there, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, whose picture is there on top. Peace and bliss be upon him always. And can move about like his name suggested. Well, what would you like to be named, young man, as a monk? Oh, I think I'll choose Asheshananda. Oh, what does that mean in Sanskrit? It means the bliss of having no residue at the end of his life. So he was going to make sure that when he lived one life, he would never have to come back to the body again. One monk of the Ramakrishna order told me once, well, to understand the sannyasin, which is a name for a monk in India, you have to realize that the sannyasin is like a man who takes a canoe to a far distant island, and as soon as he gets to the island, he burns the canoe. So he will never have to go back again. See? So he's here one lifetime and gone. That's it. One lifetime of all this nonsense was all he wanted to see, and he gave it up like that. That's called renunciation, or tyagi. So those are very self-determined people. They've made decisions. They don't have a lot of patience for the realms of name and form. If they do gain some patience along the way and some compassion to go with it, then they'll come back to help you, but they'll never think of themselves as the body again. So it's not really coming back. That's why the next verse of the Nirvana Shatkam, or the 5th verse, is Namrit Jorna Shanka Namri Jati Beda. I have no death because I was never born. So he's saying this while he's in the body. He's composing this stotram, this verse of this song, while he's still living in the body. I was never born, I have no death. So it must be a kind of a proof that we must look at seriously, that he doesn't think of himself whatsoever as being here. This is a dream to him. His body was an add-on. And he's the observer of the whole thing, you see. I've always thought of it as like an octopus, you know. It's a good exemplar because it has one eye, you see. So that's the third eye we're talking about, of course. But the octopus has one eye, but it has all these arms that goes out, you see. It'd be nice if the octopus had 5 arms. It would be a better analogy, but basically it has 8 or so. So it sends out these arms and feels the ocean bottom around it, you see. But its center is right there in that head with that one eye. So that's the seer, you see, the metaphor for the seer. They have this one single eye of wisdom, and they're centered in it. And these 8 limbs are the various sets of 5s. 5 senses, 5 pranas, 5 elements around them, air, earth, fire, water, ether. So they're just, you know, exploring that with their senses and mind. But their center is really in that one wisdom eye. So they never identify with matter. They know themselves to be spirit all the time. And that's become a kind of knowing that has led them into the path of non-duality. So I didn't get far, did I, with explaining this first karma, but people who don't have everything that I just explained, that is, the wherewithal and abilities of a seer or a non-dual luminary, have this store of karma in their scabbard, you see. They've lived before, they don't know it possibly, and really part of the penultimate purpose is to come to know that you've lived before and that you do have karmas to work out. Then what would you do? You'd go to a teacher and you'd get a mantra. In my tradition, that's the first thing you do when you find yourself in the body and realize what a pickle you're in. See? That my family, or the world, is a pit, and my family are vipers inside. That's how they felt about it. That's why Jesus left at 14, and Ramana Maharshi left at 10, and Shankara left at 12. Bye, Mom. I've got to be about my Father's business. Family life is no fun. It's a bondage, and that's where karma is created. You're here today because this is your real family. Your blood family is your karma family. This is your akarma family. You don't have any karma with these people that isn't good, that actually isn't better than good. Because the only thing you're going to hear here is Dharma. Have we talked about the weather since you walked in? Have we talked about politics? Have we talked all the little zeros that mean nothing in the end, that add up to nothing in the end? Unless you put a 1 in front of them, of course. Then it's a huge number. So that 1 is what we're always speaking about here, and Dharma is the best way to speak about it. Morality and ethics is old and tired. When religion lets you down in any day and age, and it will, Sri Krishna says, not just Christendom, but every religion lets you down in the end. It has a shelf life. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and that's why it's not real. So you renounce it at certain points, and you find your center back in yourself. You birthed all the religions. All the religions are in you. You're not in the religions. But knowing that is a fact, and what keeps you from knowing that is these arrows in the scabbards. Well, if you were to loose them, you see, then you're paying for it. Arrows loosed from the bow cannot be called back. So that's why we want to practice karma as yoga. We want to make sure that the actions we do are conscious so that they don't hold us anymore, like his name, Asheshananda. They don't create any residue for us anymore. We can still love our family. We can even love the world. Good luck with that. But it doesn't mean that love is supplanted. It's not supplanted by God, you see, by love of God. That has to be first and foremost. And you can think of God with form, without form, or beyond both. It would be better for you to take an old religion that you were born in, like Judaism, and seek the God in it, to remember why you were born in Judaism, because there was a purpose for that, or Christianity, or Hinduism, or Buddhism. There's a purpose why you were born there. And there's also a reason why you were born with your family, and you took the particular parents you did. They did not get you. You chose them. So praise and blame goes out the door when you think that way. You choose everything in this life from a witness standpoint. And this karma is influencing your choices. If you die and you're in your subtle body, they say, which is the mind in heaven, and you're going to take another body, then you have to look at all the karma that's there, that's causing you to make the choices of parents, country, nationality, occupation. All those things are chosen by you because they're in you. So if you've loosed that, you chose your body and you loosed that karma, you made your decisions based upon arrows already shot from the bow, then that's called present karma or prarabdha. That's operative karma. This karma was accumulated, stored up, but this is operative. So if you came here and thinking that you were coming to a New Age party, you see, but instead you found yourself in a group of Dharma practitioners, and all of a sudden you heard the word karma and you thought you knew something, you realize you didn't. That there are types of karma, that there are shades of karma, that there are dynamics of karma, that there are grades of karma, and that this is a whole art form called karma yoga. And by learning it, you inform yourself of knowledge, which then informs your acts from then on. You see, you're a new person. You're being reborn right there in the spirit, whether you know it or not. Of course, it would be good to come to know that. Every day, our founder of our organization, Lex Sixon, told us, he said, you have to be reborn every day. Every breath would be better, such as said. If you got initiated, get initiated again every day. Take yourself into the shrine. Take yourself into the meditation room. Take yourself to your teacher. And cause yourself to be reborn again, consciously. So that you can live in the spirit all the time. And keep Maya, or samsara, at bay. Get thee behind me, Jesus said. See, that's all behind me. It shouldn't affect me anymore. But doing restless actions, slothful actions, it's affecting the lives of people all the time now. And they don't have any peace, they don't have any bliss, and they have stress and unhappiness, and they get suffering, you see. And then people moan and bewail it, oh, I'm suffering, I'm suffering. But she said when they came to her, Holy Mother, you see, she said, oh, they come to me and they say, I'm suffering so much in my life. And then they ask me for some boons, but it's always physical things. You see, can I have this, can I have that? They never ask me for enlightenment. They suffer, but they don't ask me for freedom from suffering. How is that? See, maybe they like to suffer. Part of them likes to suffer. Western society, I've thought, is like beings who are running away from the light. They've made some sort of weird pathway of running away from the light and sinking themselves deeper and even deeper into decaying matter. They're happy there. See. So absolutely contrary to all the attraction that's there in the divine being. Call it God, Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Buddha nature, doesn't really matter. It's all attracting. So if the magnet has lost its charge, then the metal filing can't be attracted to it anymore. So we've allowed the magnet to lose its charge. We're not attracted to divine things anymore. Grasping matter, losing grace, strange indeed this human race, as the poet once wrote. It grasps onto unreal things, which is precisely why I'm not the mind, not the intellect, not the ego, not the body, I'm not the senses, I'm not the five pranas. I'm pure conscious awareness. Remind yourself of that day to day, with every breath, with every thought, until it replaces everything else in your mind, and your mind is washed clean in the ocean of the Dharma, which is what I'll be getting to when we look at Holy Mother's chart again. If you have, let's skip Kriyamani for a minute, it's a special facet of karma, but basically the three types of karma are the traditional teaching. If these karmas loose from the bow, there are also arrows that are being loaded into the bow, right? So it's not like the end of the game just because you've loosed the karmas from the bow. In fact, it could be the beginning of more games, more dreams that you're going to play with yourself. Because you loosed a bunch of arrows, but you don't know how many are left back there in the scabbard, and you're still loosing them. Sowing your wild oats, as they say, is the dreamlike fashion, with many bodies and many worlds over endless lengths of time, called yugas, or ages. So then you ought to look at that hand that's about to take the next arrow from the scabbard and load it into the bow. That action is something that should be looked at. That infers future karmas. Like I said, the monk would say, no, I'm going to burn the canoe. So basically, I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen, because he knows how attracting the world is. Most people love the world, but they don't love God, who so-called created the world. There's a teaching in Quran, Islam, it's very beautiful about that, where Muhammad appears as the guide, and you're in heaven, paradise. So when you die, you were a faithful follower of Muhammad, so you went to paradise. See, that's the idea, with its dancing maidens and its flowing streams. You got to paradise, you found it was all just really gardens, dancing maidens, flowing streams, and people doing zikr, and talking about Allah. And it was beautiful. And so Muhammad, you're there with Muhammad, your guide, and you begin to realize that Muhammad is your guide, is the all-compassionate one. who has the grace of Allah upon him. So basically then you realize that this is paradise you're in. But your mind says, what about hell? Back on earth the Quran was telling me about hell all the time. See? What is that? So you ask your guide Muhammad, what about hell? He said, hell, that doesn't exist. There's no separate realm called hell. And then you say, well, back on earth I was reading the Quran, and the Quran told me that those people who weren't faithful to Allah would end up in hell. See, the unfaithful. And your guide tells you, yes, but the Quran also said that those people who were faithful, that Allah was all compassionate. Why would an all compassionate God create a hell for beings to suffer in, even for a moment? So this startles the soul, see? But it's not convinced yet. See? So finally it says, well, the guide sees, you see, basically that it's not convinced. So it says, basically there are beings that dream themselves away from the source, and so they dream of hell. And the radiance of Allah is the purifying fire of the dream. See? Hell's fire is the purifying radiance of Allah. So they have to burn out their karmas, as it were, in this dream of hell, which is really Allah's grace upon them. So the soul awakens to that and looks at his guide and says, I see, you must be Muhammad himself. And you're telling me that hell is a dream. But I'm beginning to suspect here that maybe this paradise I'm in is also a dream. And Muhammad says, oh, my dear, dear friend, you're right. This paradise you've come to after death is also a dream. Heaven and hell are both dreams. And so the next question the soul asks, well then, Muhammad, are you a dream? And am I a dream? Yes, you've realized the higher truth. There's only Allah, which is all-embracing love. And so this, of course, is the expunging of all karmas, that all the thoughts that the soul had about the duality between heaven and hell, and the purification that came as a result of meditating upon the ideal on earth, the Prophet Muhammad and Allah. So basically it's, if I think of a teaching like that, out of a religion like that, and place it next, side by side with the teachings of the 3 or 4 kinds of karma, you can see how all of this is just so interconnected. All religions really are from one source. The names are just different. The paths seem different, and maybe they are, and the souls that follow them maybe have different temperaments and different ideals, but the essence behind it is all one, all the same, all homogeneous. So there's this one other karma here, arrows being taken from the scabbard, and then arrows being loaded into the bow. So there's this karma that's imminent, and then there's karma that's potential. So basically, to make it simple, there's accumulated karma in most souls. They come to earth to try and work it out, then it's operative. Then, as they do, this other karma arises up from nowhere. I call that putting out fires nowadays. See, you came here for a certain purpose, but these hidden karmas are coming out like beetles out of the woodwork. You don't know how they get there and where they come from, but you have to put them out, so it waylays you, and it keeps you from neutralizing the karma that you came here to satisfy, so that you can be free. And as a result then, if that happens to you, there's accumulated karma to pay for in your next birth. And if you look at this, and you take it and make it a yoga, you see, you're conscious of it, then all of a sudden you have a better grip upon the nature of relativity. You can't know yourself as reality yet, so you have to know relativity somewhat. You never want to study Maya up close, like science is doing, because it'll pull you in and make you think it's real. But you want to study Maya from a distance, see, and know it very well. Know the difference between the real and the unreal, the essential, the non-essential. Or if you want to put it that way, the wheat and the chaff. It's a teaching that's as old as religion itself. To take the sort of discrimination and separate what is God from what is mammon. To borrow words in a tradition that we're familiar with. Well, there's another one of her teachings there. Karma, not God, is responsible for our misery and our happiness. One cannot blame God for sins committed. That's one tendency that people have, oh, God, why did you make me suffer? Or why did you make me happy and other people not happy? It's the wrong thing to be saying. It's not based on the facts. Karma is responsible for all this. So if there is any God in this world, it's karma. That's the God that people march to. And the sooner you get that clear, the sooner you will be able to know that there's no God here, that you're looking for God in all the wrong places. Didn't he tell you that? It's within you. So it's not outside of you. You say, well, nature's beautiful. Okay, well then let's just call it a reflection of God. Because Sri Ramakrishna has said, basically people come here and they get attracted to the gardens, not to the owner of the garden. Isn't that just like that story in the Quran I just told? They go to paradise, and they have beautiful experiences in paradise. But they're not seeking Allah, who is pure love, where no two-ness exists, where you don't have to satisfy yourself on outer gardens and so forth. Well, it's just a reflection here on earth of the same thing we're doing, caught in matter, caught in nature. It's sort of like a fish getting attracted to sparkles on the surface of the lake. It's really very, very fine and down there in the depths, you see. But it sees these sparkles on the top of the lake, and it goes up to the surface, you see, where death is granted its fishing grounds, one song in India says. Or there's a fishing lure up there that's sparkling, you see. So it's yanked out of its beautiful depths of peace and everything into this world. And that's what birth is here, into the body. People celebrate birthdays. When we look at a baby being born, we say, oh, how can we keep this from happening again? How can we help the soul not to be born again in ignorance? Buddha said, wear this body for the last time. Does that sound like a compromising teaching to you? Does it sound like he has any doubt whatsoever that life is full of suffering? Is the first noble truth of the Four Noble Truths of Buddha, there is suffering? And if you don't accept there is suffering, then you can't be a Buddhist. So you're seeking heaven and gardens and pleasures when there's suffering all around? What's the matter with you? There's a philosophical disease going on in your head called Bhranti Darshana, deluded seeing. Your third eye isn't open. You're seeing through these two eyes, hearing through these two ears, smelling through these two nostrils, and working actions with these two arms and walking with these two legs, when oneness is your true nature. So karma is responsible for all this, your own karma. And this is the wake-up call you get with yoga, with Vedanta, with Samkhya, with Buddhism, with Jainism, with Shaivism, with Shaktism, with Vaishnavism. When you hear these teachings from India the way you should be hearing them, through a guru who has experienced them for himself, this is what you have to awaken up to. This is spiritual awakening. And we run away from it with our tail between our legs when we hear it. Nobody comes. Do you see a lot of people here? My live streaming classes, I've been doing it for years, maybe 1,000 people look in every once in a while. That's not very many compared to 8 billion. So Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about the young students that would come to him in Calcutta in the 1800s, and he said, their parents don't like me. He says, it's the most illumined soul we've ever seen on earth. Right there, born in the 1800s in India. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And yet in his time, people were trying to keep their children from going to him. Well, why is that? And the parents would say, because he stings them. But he said, no, why should I sting them? He's trying to get them to renounce the world. We want them to be doctors. We want them to be lawyers. We want them to make money. We want them to take care of us when we're old. See? But he said, why should I sting them like that? I'm just only teaching them to hold on to God with one hand and hold on to the world with the other. That's all. And if you increase your actions, you can't do that. Increasing your actions weakens the hand that's holding on to God. Doing your actions properly, karma as yoga, strengthens that hold on God. Because you've made the distinction between what's unreal, continual cycles of action, rebirth that causes karma. What else is causing karma but action? Action equals karma. Karma equals action. That's what it means in Sanskrit. So endless activities has become the path for us in the West. Endless activities. They're driving us crazy. Got an email yesterday from one of my students having to serve his grandmother and his mother and his parents whose house is falling apart, who they have no money. School is making him work double time. He says, it's driving me crazy. I don't have any peace anymore. And this is a rare occurrence among the youth today, what they're writing me, those who are interested in Dharma. They have no peace of mind. They're being driven into these worldly occupations as if that's the only recourse they have. See? And that's what we're doing to our youth. That's the examples we're being, you see, for them. There are 4 shades of karma too as we come near to the end of our first half. Black, white, black and white, and colorless. And that's a great teaching. See? I'll let you look at the quotes afterwards. Live streaming can see them on the computer at the break, and you can come up afterwards. Quotes from Sri Krishna. But basically the teaching is that negative karma, positive karma, mixed karma, and no karma whatsoever. Usually you take a teaching like this and you'd think, black and white, black and white. And so there would be no filling in your sandwich, you see. It'd be like eating a white bread sandwich with nothing in it. You wouldn't have any of the nutritional, philosophical ingredients if you didn't know that there was a mixed karma and a no karma. This will explain why these two never prevail or work at any given time, that there is a mixture going on, and this would give you a route out of the whole thing. You'd become a shesha, ananda, the bliss of having no residue. You'd be free while you're in the body. I think the favorite topic and word of my teacher in his lectures was Jeevan Mukta. The West must still produce a Jeevan Mukta, he used to say. The West has not produced a Jeevan Mukta, as India has produced hundreds of them. So Jeevan Mukta means Jiva, embodied, Mukta, liberated. They're a living, liberated soul. They live in the body, but they're the soul, that's all. They're just borrowing the body. They're not identified with it. They're not attached to it. It's not the only reality to them, for sure. It's to be given just the basic, what it needs, and nothing more. You don't need to dye its hair, or prune its eyebrows, or wash it 5 times a day, or feed it 3 times a day, and give it everything as if it is everything to you. What about your soul, which is losing all this time and losing all these nutrients called dharma when you're spending so much time on the physical body? Your soul is malnourished, you see. And your body is getting fat, see. Turn this around, is the idea. So basically you're going to want to look at this teaching of good and bad, good and bad. It's a duality. It's a dvandva mohena. It's a diluting duality, because sometimes things are going good and sometimes aren't. And that's based on karma. My bad actions that I did years ago are coming around now. My good actions are now coming around. It's just basically tamas and sattva changing places, with a good sprinkling of rajas in between. How's that for a sandwich for you? So what you need to do then is to mix this in, you see. Motivated karma is far inferior, Arjuna, to that performed in equanimity of mind. So any act you do that's motivated, that's going to bring karma, good and bad. But if you can do that action in equanimity of mind, no karma will accrue to you. You don't care whether it turns out good or bad. That's not up to you, that's up to circumstances. You just do the actions consciously, knowing that sometimes it will turn good, sometimes it will turn bad, and that it's not your fault because you did the action to the best of your ability. So you're beginning to find a bridge into action, which is much safer. But it's not the safe haven yet that this is. Colorless karma, that one whose intellect is unattached everywhere, who has subdued the self, from whom desire has disappeared, that one, by renunciation, attains the supreme state of freedom from action. So they can act while not acting, is basically what he's saying. It's not that they become stationary in one place, although that's happened to some of them, like Lord Buddha under the Bo tree for some 50 days, or Christ in the wilderness for many days and nights, or Muhammad in the desert. They become pretty much free of all actions and free of all considerations, check in with their true nature again. And it happens to them just by turning off the mind in the wilderness. So it's not paradise they're looking for, you see. They're not going out in nature and going, oh, how beautiful, I'm going to have a picnic, or I'm going to go on a vision quest. I'm going out in nature because no one's going to bother me there. I'm not going to keep my eyes open on the trees, the rivers, and the lakes, and the streams, and the birds. And I'm going to shut my mind down in nature. Because nature is the form-producing machine, and I'm a formless reality. Nature has actually come out of me. Isn't that what paradise is in your mind? Is subtle nature? And didn't this get formed from it? You had water, air, ether, fire, and earth in your dreams. And from the thoughts of those came this, fire, air, earth, water, and ether. The subtle elements give rise to the material elements. That's when you come out of dreaming into waking. And then when you wake back into dream, you change the solid elements back into dreaming elements. And you sport amongst them. Finally, you say, enough of this back and forth between waking and dreaming. I think I'll go into deep sleep and cut it all away. It's a song in India. Practice meditation and cut time down. Cut space away. And there are people sitting around thinking of writing songs about these things. Philosophical, important philosophical concepts and truths. To sing to you. To communicate it to you. It's because if you can't do it just with words, then add some music to it, for God's sake, and maybe it'll get through. That this will help you to remember who's in charge here. Who's in charge? The ego or consciousness? Consciousness should be in charge of things. And what happens when consciousness is in charge? Then it doesn't have arrows anymore in its scabbard. It's a seer when it comes to earth and the body. It gets out of its predicament right away and is about its father's business. See? Or it comes here with non-duality as its foundation. It believes in nothing but God. All of this is Brahman. And it sees all as Brahman. That's the last word in spiritual life in this world, is to see all as God. So you're going to have to get some things that are not God out of the way. And so everything that is God can fill in again. See? This is called delusion. It's called ignorance. Didn't you know nothing when you were born? And now don't you know everything? Is there anything here that you really don't know? I mean, go on the web. if you don't. Isn't the web just kind of an example of how we know everything all the time? We just can't keep it in our surface memory all the time, but we can go to it, find it out, at least versions of it that we think are true. But the point is that you know after. Knowing after is the first proof of truth in India. I'm absolutely blindsided by life in my mother's womb. As soon as I get out, I know nothing. For years, I know nothing. But later on, I know. So was that knowing nothing real? Didn't I get rid of it with knowledge? So actually, isn't ignorance unreal? It's only temporary. And I get rid of it with knowledge, that's all. So like fire is veiled by smoke, like the fetus is veiled by the mother's womb, just like that. Knowledge is veiled by ignorance. Thereby, people suffer. That's how Krishna puts it in the Gita. He doesn't say they suffer because of God, or they suffer because of the devil, or they suffer because of others. It's their own ignorance that causes them to suffer. But you know after. So once you've known after, you know before. So it's a proof of truth that you know everything all the time. It's just temporarily that you're blanked out. So let's take that into the break. Think about that, how all-knowing the soul is, how all-knowing divine reality is, and how compassionate and how full of love, and how wisdom can reveal that love to us.